We're going to continue in that vein of teaching tonight in St. John, the 15th chapter, where Jesus says, I am the true vine. And I'm going to read St. John 15, verse 1. We'll read 2 verses there. I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. Every branch in me that beareth not fruit, he taketh away. And every branch that beareth fruit, he purges it, that it may bring forth more fruit. And we're going to talk about that today. The message Jesus is giving us about the true vine. That message come in the context of that message. As we know from the last week, Jesus had given us 3 parables about the end of time to be ready. And the last one he gave us was the sheep-goat analogy. The sheep to the right, the goats to the left. Well done, my good and faithful servant. Isn't that what we want the Lord to say about us? Well done, my good and faithful servant. But in this text tonight, this is the last time Jesus has with his disciples. This is the last time they are together. And what is the message to them in this time of their life? They were afraid of Jesus being arrested. And that's why we have in the 14th chapter where Jesus said, let not your heart be troubled. If you believe in me, you also believe. If you believe in God, also believe in me. He was trying to give them the courage and the faith to continue after he's gone. Because after all, he is the source of life, right? And in this context, Jesus comforts his disciples. He's about to leave them and he encourages them. He identifies the way. He says, I am the way. He identifies the Father. He says, I am the Father. And he tells them, because I live, you live. That's the message to the church today. Because Jesus lives, we still and will live. That's the message today for the saints. You know, that was a prophetic word because Jesus was really speaking about, he was about to go to the cross to be executed. But on the 3rd day, he rose and he says, now I live. And we ought to be encouraged today because he lives, we also live. And lastly, in chapter 14, Jesus says, peace I give you. Peace the world can't give you, I give you. Don't we need that today? The peace of God is beyond all understanding. It takes away fear, frustration. In the peace of God, there is no storm. There is no problem. There are no problems. There is no trouble because Jesus said, I'm giving you peace. How much further will we be ahead even in our daily living? If we can just get rid of that fear, get rid of that anxiety, get rid of the frustrations and stresses of life. You know what we need? We need the peace of God. The peace of God comes into your life. Even when there's a storm, there's no storm. Even when you have problems, there are no problems. Why? Because you have the peace of God on the inside. In the midst of Jesus encouraging his disciples and sharing with them, encouraging them, building up their faith, he gives us a parable about a vine. And anytime we read about a vine in the Bible, it is a grapevine. That was their main fruit that grew on vines. And in this vine, we know what it is. I mean, many people have talked about it. Jesus is the true vine, and the church, us members, we are connected to the vine. Yes. And the vine is the source of life that we need to continue this walk with God. He is the true vine. And understand this in the parable that he mentions the father, or he calls him the husbandman. The husbandman has two functions. Now let's understand the parable before we go into the lesson. Jesus is the true vine, but the husbandman has two functions. That's talking about God. God has two functions in this parable. The first function is every vine that does not have any fruit on it, he cuts it off. Yes. Every vine that does have fruit, he purges it. Purging is the process of removing all unnecessary branches or bushes in the way that promotes good growth or healthy growth. Now God is doing the purging and the cutting. The source of life is coming through Jesus Christ.